So this doesn't need to be a long waffly one. This is part 2 of the Amouage fragrances. Like you can see, they're in no particular order or anything like that. So yeah, I mean that's it. We'll just crack on with the list. Try and squeeze them all into this. Sorry to get it so long, but yeah, part 2. Then we have Jubilation Woman. Now this is one that's kind of changed. My views are changed again. This is why we need to wear things a lot and kind of get to know them, isn't it? So anyway, it opens with a kind of gorgeous ylang ylang and citrus with an almost cuminy feel under it, but it's not, don't be scared, it's not, you know, big. It's just a nice kind of edge to it. The myrrh and the frankincense add the lovely freshness to it all as well. And there's kind of a little wafts of incense. I mean, incense pretty much a given to be in all of them with the resins, isn't it? As it develops, you get a touch of that Artemisia, which mixes nicely with the leathers and musks, and again it gives it that kind of, not medicinal, but that it gives you that you know, that kind of scent memory, doesn't it? Artemisia, I think. And it's very smooth, and actually it becomes a little more and more vintage smelling, a little pissy and dusty. The rose doesn't really stand out, but you get you know it's there, and there's a kind of pink sweetness in there, and it dries down to a kind of spicy, resinous, woody. Again, quite dusty smelling. Now the kind of pissy smelling bit is not long lasting, and that it's more the dusty smelling and that kind of vintage style of something from, you know, the 40s, 50s, something like that. And it's beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. At first I kind of didn't really get it. Obviously, you know, Jubilation Man, I may have mentioned or we'll be talking about, is different, but this one is kind of, yeah, I mean, it's Jubilation, is it 25 or 24, something to celebrate their anniversary, wasn't it? Maybe it's a hark back to fragrances that were 24 years ago that time, maybe not, but it's just one that grows on you. I'm not doing a very good job of describing it. It's one you'd have to sniff. But yeah, it's very Amouage-y, but like a vintage classic Amouage, if Amouage made fragrances all them many years ago. So yeah, that's Jubilation Woman. So then we have my kind of most recent bottle purchase, and that's Lilac Love. Now Lilac Love, obviously it's all about the lilac. It does open with a kind of greener lilac and a lot of florals. I wouldn't say anything particularly leaps out from these florals, but yeah, it's lilac and a kind of spring meadow florals, and then kind of straight away you get like the resinousness coming through a bit more, and the patchouli and things like that, and it kind of, the vanilla envelops it all, so it's quite a rich scent, and you get the kind of line of the lilac running through it. There is a bit of greenness still kind of there, and then it develops and it develops, and you get the cocoa. Now to me, I get a white chocolatey feel. Maybe it's because the vanilla and the resins are more prominent on me than a kind of darker chocolatey lilac, and that mix it with chocolate, and that mix it with a lilac. Oh, it's so unique and so nice. And what happens is it warms up and warms up until you're basically left like with, to me, like you imagine a white bar of chocolate with lilac and musks and spices running through it. There's a little cat down there, look, you see it. Hello. Probably doesn't want anything to do with me, but yeah, like a lilac chocolate, and it's quite magnificent. Now one of the mistakes you can make with this is it goes on. Because of the notes, you can imagine it's quite light smelling, it's not dense or anything like that. Well, as this warms up and warms up, my god, it gets dense. So it's a 1 or 2 spray, never more than that, and especially not in the heat, because this will overwhelm you. But you're surrounded like by a kind of syrupy and greeny kind of lilac throughout. The heliotrope for me is also kind of there, and I think that adds to the kind of the richness of the vanilla and stuff. It's more of a kind of heavier cloud around it all. But yes, all in all, it's quite a gorgeous one. So that's Lilac Love. So Lineage is one from the newer fragrances again, isn't it? Lineage to me opens with a fresh but spicy ginger. It's quite realistic, mixing with the myrrh, and as it settles, the pepper and the smooth frankincense come through. It's mainly about that myrrh and frankincense, to be fair. Smooth, warm resins kept fresh by the spices. In fact, I'd say the spices have an almost kind of minerally touch, like a breeze on an oasis to me with this one. And the resins kind of warm up this refreshingness, like you find in an oasis, mixing with the benzoin as well. The saltiness and the pepper gets stronger, with the burning incense getting stronger, and the sweetness from the resins keep it sweet and smooth and kind of balance them. And there's also kind of a fresh green hint in there, which is rather lovely, and it dries down into a gorgeous resinous musky myrrh frankincense kind of thing with a softer kind of salty edge. Now we know what I'm like with mineral notes and the salty notes and all of that, and they can be a struggle, but with this it's kind of more of a sandy salty feel, if you get what I mean. Not more of a desert kind of feel than a coastal aquatic sickly kind of saltiness. Now I don't know how they did it, but somehow for me it kind of really works in this one. It's beautiful. Again, I wouldn't have expected to like this, but there's something about it, again, not overly complicated, that just make it really nice and quite addictive. Now, whether you'd I'd go out and buy a bottle of this, maybe not. Is this my least favourite from this range? Maybe, but again, that doesn't say that any of them are bad. So yeah, that's Search. So the next is Love Tuberose. Now this one opens with a big gardenia and tuberose, obviously. The whipped cream kind of thickens it all up straight away, and there's an almost minty greenness kind of running through it at this early stage. Oh, it's lovely. The gardenia helps make the tuberose bigger and thicker. I think that's kind of what it does. And then there's an almost lovely creamy fudgy flavoured cream and tuberose and jasmine as it develops a bit more. Sorry about that. I think maybe there's some lily of the valley in there as well, giving it a kind of that kind of texture and warmth about it. The greener kind of notes keeps it from being a little bit too much, a little bit too heavy or sickly. It's not one that massively, changes or evolves, but the vanillas and the woods come in after a few hours into the dry down, the lily of the valley, the jasmine, the tuberose, the gardenia still there, still very petally and lovely, and they have just a beautiful musky kiss on the neck. It's really quite gorgeous. So yeah, I'd say this is a tuberose for those who might not necessarily be tuberose lovers. Just a quick little kind of indent in here. I'd say there is a kind of lily of the valley thing, but the lily is actually quite a big part of this. Okay, anyway, that's it. Sort of gourmandy. Obviously the big thick whipped cream adds that element to it. It's quite simple, it lasts a long time, but the other notes are in there too. Do you know what I mean? It's not just straight up tuberose, and that's why I think if you're a bit scared of tuberose, everything about this is smoothed and rounded, and that kind of sensual muskiness, little hints of spice. I think you get just a slight edge. This is what I'm wearing now, with a bit of incense in there. And again, I think it's important just to emphasise again about the lily, because in this far dry down, there is that quite a bit of that little lily spice. And this is a good 6-7 hours. So that's Love Tuberose. So next is a kind of another fairly famous one, and that's Lilac Man. This opens to me with a bright citrus and the rose. The slight kind of limey edge stays in there as the rose and the spices grow, with a kind of bigger greenness as well. They grow through it, and it's kind of a little bit soapy, with the pine as well being quite prominent. The green musky soapy feel dominates with the spices nicely over it, and it kind of all sits nicely in there with the rose. And I do have to say that the musks in this are magnificent in this one, really good. The rose comes through more and more, and then sort of after a couple of hours it goes through a stage where it gets a little menthol kind of touch, which is really nice, but that doesn't last too long. It's a bit like a cherry tune, you know, that kind of menthol aspect, and after a good few hours it becomes more pink and musky, still soapy, and with probably from the woods and the osmanthus sitting nicely in there, and there's a still little hints of incense, and then again this lasts so long, and you're left with a kind of musky, rosy, woody one, kind of a bit of a pink, musky, rosy, woody one. Now again, I can't rant on about this every time. This is a rose fragrance, it's a floral fragrance. There's nothing leaning about it. It's a kind of, sometimes it goes very soapy and clean, sometimes it's musky and a little bit more pink and jammy. It's a fantastic fragrance. It's really easy to wear, it's not overly complicated, this one. And if you were wanting like a posh rose that's not too challenging, yes, it's a good one. So that's Lilac Man. So then we have Lilac Woman. Now this one opens with a very jammy red rose and geranium, all kind of wrapped up in a pleasant cinnamon. The cardamom and the angelica add a kind of greener, slightly vegetal touch. Nothing too much, it doesn't last that long. The redder floral shine through. The geranium's not metallic or anything, you know, it's that kind of sweet geranium, so it's not so bad. And then you get more of the texture of the ylang ylang. As the ylang ylang kind of starts to grow through it, there is an awful lot going on in this one. And it has a vintage kind of lean to it. The sweetness in there more modern, but you know, ylang and rose can kind of have that sort of effect, can't they, really? As it gets to about the hour, the sweet, much redder florals blend with the ylang ylang. So you kind of got yellows and oranges going on there. And a tiny, nothing to be scared about, indolic touch. Probably again the ylang ylang, isn't it? Or maybe the jasmine. To me it has the jamminess is so like sweet and but I'd say it's a little bit boozy. Not like, you know, chucking liquor down your mouth kind of jammy, but a little bit boozy, yeah. And after a few hours, maybe it's sandalwood, but there's a slight coconut touch in there, just a hint, with the vanilla kind of coming through, and you get that kind of fruity floral feel, and then it kind of gets a bit drier and you're left with a fruity floral musky kind of thing a long time after. Now I have to say again, all we hear about Lilac Man, Lilac Man. Lilac Woman is bloody gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and it isn't somehow as boring as Lilac Man. Lilac Man's beautiful and great, but it's a bit safe. Lilac Woman has, with that ylang and the kind of not really being all about the rose, it has a bit more magic to it, a little bit more sparkle. So that's Lilac Woman. Now next is one of the more famous ones after the kind of New Direction thing, I think this one was, and it's Cecile Zarokian, so this, you know, that's why it got a lot of hype. It's not the first one she's done for Amouage, I can't remember the other one, but never mind. It opens with a kind of gorgeous elemi, this one. Oh, it's material, by the way. Yeah, it opens with a gorgeous elemi oud note and some vanilla. And as it settles into it, the tonka and the benzoin blend with a smooth vanilla. And the oud note isn't huge, but it adds a tiny bit of something interesting, a little bit of a kind of naughtiness in there that doesn't last long. There's a tiny sharp fruitiness, maybe the osmanthus. There's nothing particularly easy to pick out about this one though. It's you know, at this stage it's very much a vanillic, benzoin and tonka kind of fragrance. The woodier notes do poke through with the patchouli, and it's really quite smooth. And as it gets to about the hour, the little sweetness grows, more of a sort of leathery osmanthus, I'd say, mixing with a tonka, which is still the star note. And as it gets into the dry down, there's some hints of incense and a warm musky feel there, but it's basically the tonka and a little bit of a nice patchouli long into the dry down. Now this one for me, it's very beautifully done, it's very well done, don't get me wrong, but you have to be a bit of a kind of tonka lover for it. It's not overly complicated. It's just a very smooth, very well done, tonkery, vanilla-y, benzoin-y kind of one, which isn't, you know me, it's not normally my kind of a thing. But if you like that whole kind of DNA and style, then this is a brilliant one. It is really good. It's really well made, just not my favourite. So that's Material. So Memoir Woman. This one opens with a blast of a more kind of vintage white floral with the sweeter jasmine in there, and it absolutely kind of has the most incredible spices coming through it, like the clove, the pepper, the wormwood, and they add a kind of sweet warmth to it all. And there's a kind of warm furry hints of castoreum. Again, it's not one that's overly animalic or dirty or anything. It's also kind of all surrounded in a veil of smoky incense. It's really nice. There's the vintage florals and the sweeter big florals do kind of dominate it quite a lot. It's quite beautiful. This does have that kind of Victorian style goth-like thing in your mind at this stage, like a long old lacy black wedding dress, a little bit musty, dried flowers everywhere, and someone's maybe sprayed some Dior poison in the last decade or something. And then it kind of dries down, still with that vintage vibe, and it's kind of, you get more noticeable with the incense, and it's the muskiness and the sharp florals that dominate, and there is a smooth leathery texture. And after many hours, you're kind of left with this just beautiful, soft, resinous, musky fragrance. It's really gorgeous in the far dry down. Now then, overall, before it gets to that dry down, there's a kind of couple of hours. Yeah, it does have a very much a Dior poison kind of feel about it, but thankfully it's Amouage. It's not quite as sharp or abrasive of that, and in a funny kind of way, I think I kind of like that bit about it. Now, I do prefer the early stage and the dry down more, because poison is a bit of a struggle for me, isn't it? But all in all, it's a very gorgeous fragrance, and it definitely has your kind of old style goth feel about it. Gorgeous one. Memoir Man. Now this one opens with a rich, gorgeous greenness and a sweet kind of mintiness, which actually I really enjoy. A little like a green verdant forest with this kind of fresh, beautiful breeze coming through it. There's also a little fresh citrus in the background, giving it kind of a little more vibrant. And as it develops, that lush greenness stays over the top, but some of the drier notes, like the vetiver and the lavender, start to poke through with the moss from the base, and the woods and a vanilla kind of touch really smooth it out. And after a couple of hours, it's all about the greener notes with the leather, and the vetiver definitely grows much more. and I'm sure there's something like a dark cypriol in the bottom, and that takes over with the growing musks, and it dries down musky and a little more kind of aromatic green and woody. Now surprisingly, especially as it's got mint in it and it is quite aromatic and very, very green, I really enjoyed this one again. Not normally my cup of tea, but it's got that, you know, that amouage-ness about it that just makes it interesting, and something that's really quite nice. It's also quite classy, it's not too much, nothing's too strong, nothing dominates. A really, really well done green fragrance, I think. So that's Memoir Man. Next is a Myths Man. This is one that I got a kind of partial bottle of, just on the punt. But anyway, this opens with a chrysanthemum and a huge elemi, and a touch of lime there too, all enveloped in this dense black smoke. I think the sweetness comes mainly from the kind of rum, is it maybe, and a hint of rose with the slightly spiciness from the chrysanthemum. The smokiness gets more ashy as it develops, and there's hints of leather. But the elemi and maybe the rum and the kind of chrysanthemum are the most noticeable. The orris does keep it quite smooth, balancing the sharper feel in that kind of flat. It's a little bit like Dior Homme Parfum. Obviously there's more of a kind of floral touch and smoky ashiness about this, but it's actually quite beautiful. Yeah, I kept saying rum, didn't I? Rose, sorry. As it grows more, the dry down gets more ashy, and it feels a little more kind of green grassy with the vetiver and the leather. The iris remains there, giving it that silky feel, and the sweet sharper notes have faded away. So like I say, yeah, this is like, it could be a flanker of Dior Homme Parfum done Amouage style, which, you know, it's big, it's got all the smokiness in there. It's one that's taken me quite a while to get used to and that, but I think it's one of them kind of masterpiece, not very often spoken about Amouages, I think. I think the fact the opening is quite a lot. It's quite unique, and the chrysanthemum's an unusual note to smell in perfumery. I like, so you do get that kind of, with the elemi and the lime, it does give it that almost kind of a little bit of toilet freshener kind of feel, but a little bit, and it's not unpleasant, it's not nice, but that fades, and the ashiness, that thick ashiness and smokiness kind of take over all that as it gets smoother with the iris and that. It's a beautiful fragrance. So that's Myths Man. So Opus III, it opens initially straight away with the violet, and you do get some of the yellow. It's more of a drier mimosa. The sweetness from the ylang, the ylang doesn't necessarily boom through, and obviously the wood straight away, the little bit greenness could be the papyrus, and it kind of develops, and you get much more of the violet. There could be a kind of irisy fluff around it, or that could be from the violet itself. And then obviously there's some just stunning musks in this. I think could be ambrette as well, but it's very musky, it's very powdery. The violet also has a kind of a violety vein through it, and it maintains this bit of juiciness. So I'm not entirely sure what from. There is a kind of fruity feel, could be the ylang in there. Maybe there is some sort of other random fruit in there, and it's bright, and it just gets kind of woodier, maybe muskier, and a more kind of a powdery violet. But it never turns into like a powder bomb. There's still a little bit of this and that there. Could there be some incense? Very minimal, very minimal. This is not your kind of big, typical smoky, resinous, wild amouage. There is the soft, smooth, sweet resinousness. Maybe something like a myrrh. perhaps, but it's generally just a beautiful purple fragrance. It's gorgeous. Could it be my favourite from Amouage? Maybe, and that, which is weird because it's probably the least Amouage of Amouages, but a beautiful scent. So that's Opus III. So Rose Incense is one of the newer ones again. It's one of the Opus lines. It is 12, is it? I'll have to flash that up on the screen. I think it's 12 or 11, one of them anyway. Anyway, it opens with a bright rose and a frankincense, and the inkiness is there. It's weird. It's a very distinctive note when you smell it. It does smell like fresh ink in a jar, and there's a kind of warm peppery spice and obviously some incense there. The rose is like it's been dipped in the ink as well, like the petals are kind of dripping with that. It's not metallic, but again, you know what the kind of smell of ink is, a kind of dark wateriness, isn't it? And the resins give it all a kind of fresh but rich texture. The sweet rose grows nicely. There's a little sharpness, but it's still a kind of big red incensey rose. And it, you know, as it develops a bit more, you get the kind of pale red vibe from the rose to me, and the resins and the musks grow. But the rose stays over the top. It stays rich and sweet and red. It doesn't overly change, and you kind of get the frankincense gives it that kind of airy freshness about it, and there's like a little bit of burning kind of resins as well. Maybe more of a burning myrrh, because a myrrh has kind of, to me, more of a sweetness when it burns than the frankincense. That's kind of, it definitely, I mean, to me anyway, when I burn it, frankincense is a little more kind of citric than that. So it's fairly pleasant. Overall, I was surprised by the hype this got. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful rose, and it's more of a rose resin to me than the incense. This is not particularly smoky for an Amouage. Still very gorgeous, and it is very nice, but it's not all that unique. It's beautiful rose with an Amouage kind of twist, but nothing kind of over the top. So that's Rose Incense, Opus Rose Incense. So the next one we have is Opus 13, and that's Silver Oud. Now this one, this is a special one. Again, it took me quite a bit of time to get used to it. So it opens with a lovely rich deep oud and patchouli. Now, I don't know whether I got used to it but I remember the first time I kind of tried it, it was the oud was very cheesy and hard to kind of deal with. It's not so bad actually now. Again, whether I've got used to it or I don't know. The smoky cypriol and the kind of birch come sort of in and around it, and there's also a hint of something a tad aromatic, mixing with a kind of elegant dark woods, but the vanilla smooth it all out quite nicely, so it's not too much. It's not, you know, it's not too wow, what the hell is this, because that vanilla kind of helps it quite a bit. And as it develops, there's something a little incensey in there, and you kind of it smells like there's a silver veil around it all. But I know that's the name, but it does have that kind of silver aura, and the dark smokiness with the woodiness, kind of, again, just the contrast in the mix is quite magical. The dark patchouli, I think it is where you get a hint of the sweetness, and there's a leathery texture that starts to come through as well. To me, it's actually a little chocolatey as well, mixing with the oud and the woods, and that kind of pleasant resinous feel. It dries down, not too different, but very smooth, a little musky, with the patchouli, the leathery feel, and the woods. Now, this initially was quite a scary one. No, it shouldn't be. It's actually really rather rather beautiful. Of the new ones I've tried, this is more you're leaning back to old school Amouage. There's a lot going on. It's very complicated, and once you get past, for some, maybe like I say, I just got used to it, the kind of strong, more naughty oud. This fragrance is magnificent. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's very classy. It's very Middle Eastern smelling, if you like what I mean, but in a proper way. We're not talking about Armaf here or anything like that. We're talking like a proper traditional, what I imagine Omani scent would be. But again, it's still palatable enough for us in the West. So that's Opus 13 Silver Oud. So then we have Opus 14 Royal Tobacco. This is probably one of the famous, very recent releases that gets a lot of hype and talked about a lot. Again, another Cecile one, I believe. Anyway, it opens with a sparkling bergamot and kind of beautiful dried cigar kind of feel. The anise and the licorice come through, adding their dark magic, and with that kind of darkness, the frankincense adds a fresh kind of crispness as well, I think, around it all. And as it develops, it becomes a little more creamy almost through the dark notes, and the dark tobacco, like a butteriness. I wouldn't go as far as creamy, maybe. There's a sharp little bit of bitterness in there as well, probably from the fenugreek, and the brightness from some of the florals add a kind of a sweet fresh touch. And there's a lighter tobacco, and maybe it's the vetiver that kind of mingles in there, you know, like a kind of golden, kind of dry loveliness. To me, it's taking a few puffs of a lit pipe. It's that kind of feel about it. There's an awful lot going on, and it is very amouage-y. After an hour or so, the anise comes through very nicely, with the resins adding that lovely touch of sweetness in there. The birch and the woods in the base are noticeable with a kind of dark smokiness, and it's just a delightful tobacco, really. If you like tobacco fragrances and you know what Amouage do, this would be one I'd say definitely worth checking out. It's fantastic. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but it's smoky, it's dark, it's tobacco-y, it's obviously, and it's just really, really good. And I like that it's not really got much sweetness, and the sweetness actually comes from the anise, which just, yeah, I think it's really, really good. So that's Opus 14 Royal Tobacco. And Amouage Portrayal. Now this is one I don't have the man version of at this point, but maybe I will do. But anyway, Portrayal is it my favourite Amouage? Maybe. It is basically, it opens with a big white flowers, the rich, beautiful, magnificent, delightful big jasmine, and there's also other white flowers in there. There's I think there's tuberose and maybe some others kind of creeping in there, but it is mainly obviously about the jasmine. And what you get running through it is obviously this amouage resinousness, a little bit of an incensey thing, and the tobacco, but also the tobacco is more of an ashy fag, someone smoking a cig, you know, whilst rolling about in these jasmines, wearing this big jasmine back in the 1920s, you know, a flapper girl, and there's a lovely kind of muskiness in there. There's a kind of very slight indolic touch to it as well, which again takes you back to that period, the kind of beautiful proper smelling florals. And if you like jasmine, my god, this is one to try out. It's massive with that vintage kind of feel. Now this is one I've waffled on about an awful lot, and I think there are a couple of reviews from me on here, so I'm not going to go on to it too much to keep it short. But it's just a magnificent jasmine and bit of smoky kind of thing, with a few other things going on with that kind of proper vintage nod. It's magnificent. So that's Portrayal. Next is Purpose. Now this opens with a huge blast of black pepper and a gorgeous frankincense. And there's a kind of sherbety citrus there, nicely mixing in with it all. The frankincense again probably adds a bit to this. There's also a pleasant golden sand-like feel in there too, with an almost, to me, kind of sweet vetiver. I think, to my mind, I see again another oasis in a huge dry desert, with a kind of sweet airy incense, the lovely green trees, and the kind of citrusy notes. The sandy feel merges into more of a kind of airy frankincense and vetiver. It's lovely, this one. After about 3 or 4 hours, the sandalwood and the suede come through more. And then you still get the resinous frankincense, and it adds that silky smoothness. I'm absolutely positive I get some sort of sensual floral iris in there, and that stays there with the pepper, like long into the dry down, and that sandy feel. So it's quite a dry one. It's beautiful. It's not something I've ever smelt done on this kind of level. I like these deserty ones, and the mixture of the kind of still a bit of greenness in there and the sweetness. Again, it's quite lovely. So that's Purpose. Now, probably one of the most famous ones is Reflection Man, and I think this is pretty much one we'll have all kind of heard of or sniffed. But anyway, it opens with that kind of sweet aromatic blast of rosemary and jasmine. Actually, for one of the first times, I did notice the bright yellow ylang. It doesn't last through the fragrance, but it's definitely there, and it's nice. Nothing overly leaps out though. You do get the orris texture and then smooth kind of bright clean notes in there. It's all about the jasmine though. And mixing with the bright rosemary, and maybe I'd say some clary sage again, over the woodsy, not too strong, but maybe a kind of touch of cedar also in there. It does stay very similar. This is probably their most linear one so far, and right into the dry down, but maybe it's a little bit muskier and powdery from the orris, with a soft woodiness and the lovely jasmine and rosemary hints. Now, this one, if you're going to try Amouage, I would say this is the most approachable. Well, I wouldn't say it's the one to go for, because it doesn't give a fair reflection of what Amouage is like. But it is magnificently classy. It's a white shirt one. If you're going to an event or something like that, you just want to smell clean and pretty amazing. Now, this one makes me laugh a bit, because it is predominantly jasmine, and quite a sweet jasmine at that. The aromatic notes do tame it a bit, but this is an unbelievably floral fragrance. You could say what it's most similar to in the collection, I'd say, is Portrayal Woman. But again and again, oh sorry, that hill, you hear this described as a masculine floral, whatever the hell that is. I mean, whatever. Maybe because it's got man on the name, that automatically genders the flowers. It's a floral fragrance, very classy, clean, and people also compare it to La Mal. No, but it does the same kind of thing, you know. It's that kind of sweeter, easier, more modern aromatic fragrance. So yeah, but yeah, this is a beautiful, classy, clean floral Reflection Man. Reflection Woman. So this one opens with a gorgeous violet to me, and some watery florals. Yeah, you get the freesia and the jasmine, and with the greenness, but it's more like they're kind of floating down a stream, and there's some gorgeous muskiness already surrounding it all. The violet, it sits behind it all with an almost chalky sweetness, and there's definitely a touch of watermelon, I'd say, to me. It's not listed, but or maybe a watery pear. It's something, you know, with that kind of fruity bite about it. The watery green and now kind of banana-y type florals, which are quite lovely, add a lovely aura with a slight, very slight indolic touch. It doesn't overly change in that it kind of just stays like a nice watery floral. That lasts a long time actually, this one, with a growing muskiness, and it's very nice. Again, this is not an overly complicated one, a lot like Reflection Man. It's easy, it's classy, it's refreshing, and actually it really suits the name because of that wateriness. You can kind of see these florals shimmering on the top of the water. I wouldn't say it's the most unique fragrance I've ever smelled. There's a few like it. In fact, it reminds me a bit of one I've got. I can't put my finger on it, but obviously it's Amouage style. It's very elegantly done. It's very beautiful. I wish the violet lasted a bit longer in it, because that's really quite nice in the beginning there. But it's a very nice, easygoing kind of spring day floral. I wouldn't go too much in the heat with this because it's very big. So yeah, that's Reflection Woman. And the last one of the newer ones is it's called Search, and this one opens with a lovely lemon and lime rind swimming in a little glass of fresh orange juice. It's sumptuous, and there's also a pleasant smokiness, and even to me something a little kind of coconutty. Don't know where that's from. And as it develops, the lovely resins add some body to it. The smooth elemi and frankincense create even more of that kind of citrusy kind of edge. But it's mainly about the lime to me though, and I'd say it's so juicy and tart. It's really quite mouth-watering. The smokiness grows with a leathery feel as well, and the sticky lime stays over it, with whispers of that orange still there, keep giving it like a little fresh kind of feel. And after a few hours, the vetiver and the wood start to come through. I'm mixing now with more of an orange citrusiness, and it's the resins keep it smooth, and it dries down to a kind of almost soapy, musky resinousness, still with bits of them kind of citrus zests and peels lingering over it. This one was the one I didn't expect to enjoy, because you know me and citruses, but this is citrus done Amouage style. You know, it's not too tart. It's very zesty, you can almost feel the back of your mouth, you know, like you've bitten into a lime. It's that juicy. The elemi and the frankincense just add more of that to it, and the smokiness, and again the kind of dry, beautiful spiciness. It's very enjoyable, and yeah, I mean, it was just an excellent new line really. Again, not too challenging, but great. And this is the citrus one. Surprised me a lot, and it's a very enjoyable, more than citrus if you like, from Amouage, and more of a kind of vibrant, sharp, zesty one, if you get what I mean, rather than just like your bright, fresh, watery, airy citrus. Very nice. Sunshine Woman, this one's a sadly discontinued one, quite a while ago I think actually. It opens with a gorgeous sumptuous blackcurrant and almond. The osmanthus mixes nicely with the blackcurrant too, giving it a nice kind of peachy apricot-y aura quite early on. The juniper is quite noticeable in this kind of stage, and with a little green and slightly dry notes in there. To me it kind of takes me to a sunny green forest with fruits and greenery everywhere, and as it develops, that gorgeous osmanthus, nice and fruity, kind of takes over more, with some of the lovely musks with the blackcurrant more in the background at this point. It dries down beautifully with a kind of a sweet tartish, no, not quite tart as in too bitter, but quite tart, fruity sweetness with a lovely musky suede. And in the far dry down, it doesn't change too much again. It's a little more woody and peppery, still with that kind of fruity osmanthus one going over it. This one is exceptionally nice. It is really, really nice, but I think you've got to be more of a kind of fan of osmanthus and that kind of peachy apricotty thing in there. The blackcurrant adds the nice tartness in there, and it's bright in a weird way. It's bright in like a hazy, sunshiny day, if you get what I mean. You know, like if you're walking, I don't know, I don't have fruit trees near me, but if it was like this more open patch rather than a forest and there were fruit trees, maybe it's what an orchard looks like, I don't know. But do you know what I mean? It's more hazy, bright, open fields. It would take me to Spain. Spain's a place like that, isn't it? And it's really nice. It's a shame it went, really. So that's sunshine. So thanks, folks, for watching. If you managed to get through it all, I apologise again. It's probably very long. I reckon an hour and a half, maybe longer. Like I say, I've said many times, it's not all of them. They're not in any particular order. Do I have any favourites? I suppose would be a good time. Portrayal is up there. There are some very unique ones, like Bracken Woman is a good one. Disappointments, maybe. Interlude Black Iris just wasn't. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but you know what I mean. It just wasn't everything I'd ever dreamt of. There are some obviously that weren't very me. That's just the way it kind of rolls with things, isn't it? What about you? Have you got any favourite amouages? Have you tried many? Are there disappointments from it for you? Any great loves? This does not need to be long after such a long video. So thanks for watching, folks. Like I say, I may get round to getting the others, the XIIIs and the few missing ones and that, if I can find them. An Amouage, like I say, expensive, but I'll get there. Alright, thanks for watching and thanks for enjoying this, folks. Bye.